Mario is a carpenter in the original Donkey Kong games, making him resonate with Jesus Christ. Toad in the Japanese games is called Pinocchio, a play on the Japanese word for mushroom, and Pinocchio. In the story of Pinocchio, which resonates the biblical story, Geppetto, also a carpenter, carves Pinocchio out of a block of wood. So if Mario is a carpenter, Mario could be seen as the father of Toad. I've shown in a previous video how the heroic journey into a whale appears in at least 2 Nintendo games and maybe more. One of the key elements of the Pinocchio story is Pinocchio's entry into the whale to save Geppetto. This is also a biblical story about Jonah, who found himself trapped inside the belly of a whale until he found God. This whole whale incident in the Mario universe appears very clearly in Super Mario Land 2. And as I showed in my Super Mario Land 2 video, the image of the nose is very prominent in that game. Wario has a big red nose, and a lot of the bosses seem to echo this nose element. Ricky the mouse. The witch, Sabasa, has a big crooked nose, typical of a witch. The bird boss has a big beak. So of course, the Pinocchio story is famous for its nose symbolism as well. When Pinocchio lies, his nose grows. Here in the Pinocchio resonating Super Mario Land 2, Wario appears almost as a deceitful Mario, someone who has intruded into Mario's being, his castle. I think one of the many interpretations of the Pinocchio story is phallic. The nose growing is like a penis getting an erection, and especially with a young kid in front of his father, no matter how much one tries to conceal the flow of libido within oneself, the body and the changes in the body in adolescence and so on will always reveal that to the father. Wario's red nose seems to imply that it's red because of blood, so Wario's nose seems to be like the central nexus of blood vessels in his body, like a penis. The image of the nose as symbolizing the phallus, I think, is prominent in a lot of world mythologies. Toad is a helper at Princess Peach's palace, and also Toad gets kidnapped himself. He offers help, but is just as easily affected by the evil coming and going of Bowser as the other characters that Mario will then have to save. In this respect, the name Toad echoes perfectly with Slippy the Toad from the Star Fox franchise, who is also a helper who doesn't fulfill the main heroic role and is kidnapped very often in the game and has to be saved, but at the same time is a helping character. Because the Mario Toad is in a royal setting next to princes and princesses, this connects Slippy the Toad back to the image of the toad who, when kissed, turns into a prince, and also connects this image of transformation back with mushrooms. Back to the nose symbolism. In Wario Land 4, Keyser, the sleeping key bird, its key is its nose, and it's in a Wario game, Wario also having a prominent nose. In Japan, the nose is usually the center of the self and where you would point to when referring to yourself. So this all ties up a Freudian sort of libido side to a Jungian individuation aspect. If in the Pinocchio story, Pinocchio goes into the whale in order to save the parents, Toad, as some sort of a wooden son of Mario, would fulfill this role. If Toad is the son of Mario, then Toad is also Baby Mario. In Yoshi's Island, Baby Mario is on a quest to save Baby Luigi and return to the family. And in the cover art of the box, we see a prominent image of a big blue whale coming out of the water, and Baby Mario, Pinocchio, staring into the whale. That is the quest in front of him. So the Pinocchio image is that of a body or a self, a place in which one resides, as being made of wood. And Pinocchio connected to Toad connects him to mushrooms, toadstools, and fairies, also being little creatures living next to mushrooms. So here, these two images converge in the Zelda series. In Ocarina of Time, Link, a little fairy boy, lives inside a tree. His self, his residence, is wood. And one of the very first things he confronts, the first dungeon, is also a tree house. So if we take the Zelda story, like the Pinocchio story, to be about maturing and going from childhood to confronting the world as an adult, then the very first thing Link does is leave his childhood home behind. And the childhood home is immediately represented as the Deku Tree, who is dying. So the dying Deku Tree is a house you can no longer return to. It's already dead. The only path is forward towards adulthood now. The Deku Tree, as a wooden body, is also like Pinocchio, trying to find a human body, leaving this wooden body, almost like a butterfly's cocoon or shell, behind. What Link retrieves from the Deku Tree is an emerald, green, like Link himself. It's what he needs to take with him. All he needs is the emerald himself. The shell needs to go. This image of the tree being the first boss and also a living being appears in the Kirby games as well. Wispy Woods blows attacks, sort of air, pure breath of life out of its mouth and drops apples, red apples like the forbidden fruit, onto Kirby. Kirby uses those apples back at the tree, or also gusts of air, like Kirby himself also breathes life. So here we have two images where the first thing that's confronted by the hero is the tree being a living entity, and the mouth being the exit or entryway of life, the same way that Link enters and exits the Deku Tree through its mouth. So Link is that gust of air, the breath of air, and the emerald. Another connection between the Zelda and Kirby universes, which I'd need to explore further, is Poppy Bros. The Poppy brothers, Senior and Junior, are very much like Link, also these sort of little fairy people with a spiky hat, and throw bombs, the same way Link throws bombs to open passageways. Now, if in the Zelda game there's a whale reference in Lord Jabu Jabu, as I said in the other video, there's another bigger reference in Link's Awakening, because the wind fish is dreaming the whole reality Link is in. So that is another way of representing the theme of being inside the whale. In the whole game, Link is inside the whale's mind. And the discovery of God within Link's individuation is the thing that sort of pops the bubble. In the Kirby series, we have a whale as well. Fatty whale. Sort of a whale dressed as a sailor. Now, this whole connection of whales to Pinocchio and Jonah, and now to sailors, reminds me of Moby Dick, the famous novel. In Moby Dick, we have the chief mate Starbuck, the more religious character who doesn't want to defeat the whale, but escape the whale and return back to family. So Starbuck reminds me more of Jonah in this sense, who wants to find God and leave the whale. Now, Kirby's name in Japanese is Hoshi no Kabi, which literally means Kirby of the Stars, or Star Kirby. So Star Kirby could be Starbuck. Another interesting Starbuck image is Star Fox of the Star Fox series, whose name to me clearly resonates with Starbuck, especially as the fact that he's the hero in a game revolving around ships flying on a journey, like the Pequod. Fox himself was also inspired in the Japanese fox deities when Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator, was walking around some temples in Kyoto. So once again, Fox is the Starbuck also because of his connection to the divine or to nature. Now, Fox is battling against Andros, a giant monkey head. A head without a body, floating in outer space, so not connected to Earth, is like the ego, a giant inflated ego separate from nature, floating out in its big sort of royal boss kingness. The Japanese name is Andorf, connecting him to Ganondorf. It's also speculated that Andros may have gone mad from exposure to his own strange experiments. So we have a giant crazy monkey who is like the ego at the end of the heroic journey to be confronted. Now the funny thing is that the other prominent monkey in Nintendo universe is Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong clearly is like an ego element. He has his own initials on his tie, and in Donkey Kong Country he loses his bananas. This could be seen as an idiom for losing your mind or going bananas, going crazy like Andros, and connecting the ego to madness. In Donkey Kong Country 2, it's Donkey Kong himself who is kidnapped and has to be saved by the children, the inner child, like Pinocchio. It's also funny how the image of going bananas or losing your bananas is here expressed as Donkey Kong losing his banana hoard. So he's hoarding bananas. He has a massive mountain of them, the hoarding of libido, the hoarding of energy without using it, without letting life flow. In fact, the plot for Donkey Kong Country 2 has Donkey Kong just lounging from his success in the first game. He's just lounging there as if the game is over, in a sense. And Funky Kong, the surfing monkey, asks him, to come surf with him. And Donkey Kong ignores him, and precisely because of that, gets kidnapped. So Funky Kong's suggestion was also a warning that life flows, life never stops. And when it stops and it becomes static, that's when you hoard money, you hoard bananas and libido, and sort of create a blockage in the flow. Funky is like, no, flow again, don't hoard things, don't stagnate, because that will inflate the ego. The hoard, in a sense, is the ego becoming bigger. The bigger the hoard, the bigger the ego, and the bigger the madness.